Hey everyone, I want to show you a bullet game that I played. I only spent 20 seconds on this entire game, and it might be the most accurate bullet game that I've ever played. I got a 99.9% accuracy for this. Now, granted, it was only 18 moves long, but I think it goes to show that sometimes some of these patterns that you recognize to win the games are really, really helpful. And this is a pattern that you absolutely need to know if you're going to play the ChessGoals repertoire. I was white in this game. I played D4, D5, and we get the Marshall defense, which is generally considered to be kind of dubious sometimes, but not really. I mean, it's totally playable. It often ends up looking something like a bit of a Grunfeld. So we take, or not take, advance, and and white chooses to, black chooses to put the knight over on b6, whereas the ChessGoals repertoire shows the line where they're coming back to f6, and after c3, the bishop comes out, and we play this bishop d3, and we're going to get something kind of similar to this in this game, because we get this e5, and we're all geared up for the sacrifice that we're going to see here. So knight b6 has the knight kicked away from the f6 square already, and so not defending f7, and so we should already be thinking about the Greek gift, which is something I'm already thinking about here. So c6, which I think is a bit of a weird move. Black wants to play c5 or something like that, or the knight wants to be on c6 to pressure my d4 pawn, but on c6, this pawn is just kind of in the way. The knight can't go there, which means that multiple pieces are all fighting for the d7 square. I don't like this move very much. Just bishop to d3, and now bishop to b4. Now I'm really thinking I'm almost certainly going to get the sacrifice I want. So I castle, they castle, and we play e5. And we have all of the conditions in place for our sacrifice. There's almost nothing that black can do now to avoid this. So we have the bishop hitting f7, which is our first condition. We have a knight coming to g5, which is our second thing. It is defended. And our queen has access to both d3, g4, and h5, which are all going to be sort of necessary. And from the black point of view, it's helpful that the queen and rook are still on their original home squares. That'll be important in a moment. It's also important that this bishop cannot get to this diagonal anywhere to defend the h7 square, because we'll take a look at that. And it's also important that the queen can't get to d3, because there's sometimes where if the queen can come to d3, then that prevents the sack. So really, the best thing that black can do here is to play f5, which is just a horrendously ugly move. I mean, we're still totally winning. It's already almost a +4 position. We just take en passant. They have to take with the pawn. Taking with the rook, it would just allow this pin. And taking with the queen, I mean, also possible, but again, we're just going to come out here. You're forced to come back, and we get knight to e5 with tempo. The queen's got to move back again, and now we get something like queen g4, and we have some pretty major threats. We have a huge attack coming. Huge attack. All of these pieces are stranded off to the other side of the board. So you try to bring something back like this. Well, now just queen h4 is not there, but queen h4 is a major, major problem. We're threatening mate already. We try to block it. We can just grab this bishop, and you can't take back, so this is already coming with a major threat. Rook f5 is apparently the best move, which seems totally ridiculous. But you've got to defend against this mate somehow. So we already get a huge attack even if they played the best move here, which is f5. Instead, black chose to play the knight out to d7, which does nothing. We just go sacrifice, takes, and then of course, as everybody knows, this is step one important for why the queen is still here and the rook is still here. You can't come to h6 because this check would pick up a pawn and the queen, and of course everyone knows you can't go backwards. I mean, if you go backwards, allow me to come my queen to h5 with check, so you can come back here. It changes nothing. You've got to give up the queen now. There's really nothing better. You can't hide because this very well-known pattern is important to grab this pawn, because the king is going to hide here, but we're going to mate him. So we get this mate, which is the super most common, but then the trickiest one. So we already know if they go backwards, what to do, and we know if they come forward to h6, it's pretty straightforward. The only tricky line is when they come out to g6. And we have three sort of main options and ideas. We have queen to d3, we have h4, and we have queen to g4. Now, in this situation, all of them are winning just fine. But we see another point taking advantage of this queen's location on this square. And generally, if the queen is still placed on d8, h4 is going to be the strongest way to continue. And our idea is quite simple. We're just going to play h5, force the king over to the h6 square, and then we can take and pick up the queen. The other point is that if they try to go h5, it doesn't stop this at all. And if they instead, I mean, it's not clear what else they can even try to do. Rook h8 was what was played in the game, the idea being that if we advance the pawn, they're just going to take it. But this has drawbacks we'll look at. But let's look at the other move. So queen, instead of the rook coming out, we can go queen to d3. And this actually is going to end up being pretty similar to some of the other lines we're going to look at when the queen isn't here. So we just go f5 is really the only move. We take en passant, and the king needs to take. There's nowhere else really to go. You can't go backwards. You can't come here. Can't come forward. Can't take the knight. This is also no good. I mean, okay, fine. You come here. I just have check. You're going to come out to here, and then queen to h3 is just going to be a checkmate. So that's obviously terrible. So it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to figure out what you're going to do as black here. You got to just take. But now we just have the rook coming to the e file, going to grab this pawn. And what are you going to do to stop that? I mean, you can try to move this knight, but where exactly are you going to move the knight to? Try to do, I mean, maybe you move the knight back, but this is absolutely terrible. All kinds of things come to mind. Maybe I don't know, queen e4. We're maybe not going to take here, but we have another check coming here, and maybe we'll go grab this pawn. So, for example, if you just take here, we can grab this guy back, and so queen, say queen to d5, just trying to stop this check here. No problem. We just come to h4, and we're threatening some pretty brutal discoveries now. I mean, we can all kinds of things. So you bring a knight out now. It's going to be terrible. We get f4, we get knight takes e6 is probably the simplest thing. You go king to f7, and we can come knight back to g5, and now this rook is totally in the game. What are you can't come backwards, you can't go here. Coming here is just going to allow this to happen to you, and you still can't come this way. So you're still in all kinds of horrible trouble. Maybe the queen comes to h5. We're not going to come to here just yet, but we're also making this as a pretty major threat, and it seems like we're going to pick up the queen. So queen to d3, quite strong. Against this f5 maneuver, still works just fine. So let's look at a situation where this h5 wasn't so great. So for example, this position, which is identical to what we just had, except for I've shifted the queen over one square. And now we definitely need to lead with the queen move. We're going to come here, f5, again, the only move we take, comes across, and now we have rook to e1. And we're threatening to win the queen immediately. And really the only good way to deal with that, because the queen needs to defend this square, otherwise the rook is just mate, would be to try to play e5. But then we can just capture, and when the knight takes, we just head over to g3. And we're going to continue building threats here. The bishop can come out. That's maybe the best. We can just give this check. You can't really take it. I mean, you can, but that's just going to let us bring up an additional piece. So if you try to hide out of the way, no problem. I got checks. Try to block. I got more checks. And we finally forced you to a place where we're going to win the queen now. So you come out of the way. It doesn't matter whether you went back to f7 or h7. We have this discovered check, and we pick up the queen, and our attack continues to rage on. So that was just an example of a situation where this h4 move is not the best because we don't have these threats to fork the queen. So we can look at it as the game went, though. As the game went, we'll go back. We played h4 with this big threat of playing h5, and black tries to stop it. But now the rook is not defending f7, which is going to give us some new opportunities. So we have this check, and we can take en passant after they play f5, again, the only move. And then the difference, though, is now we have queen f3, and there's no rook. There's no rook to attack us when they move out of the way. So if you try to jump back to here, it's really no better if you go to e7. They're both mates. It's just, we just go queen to f7. You try to hang out here, and we can play this bishop f4 check, which stops you from going back and hiding. And you really don't have anything other than to block this way. But now we can just capture here. And again, you got to take with the knight, but that lets the queen come across and hide here. We're also covering this square, and so it's just a final check. We can pick our knight. Either one we want is a mate. And as the game went, instead of coming that way, went to g6, trying to go hide on this side of the board. That doesn't help any, because we can go check. We can play here. Now he's on the fateful h6 square. And we could go in the queen, but we have better. Because after here, this is just a checkmate. And yeah, this is all just a pattern recognition that you really, really want to know. Because some of this is maybe a bit tricky to find if you haven't seen it before. So as we go back to the standard procedure, we can see this h4 idea is a really strong way to follow up, especially if this rook and this queen are still on their home squares, and we have this pawn anchored on e5. So anyway, I hope that this helps you guys, and that you get to use this pattern. This happens in a lot of games. This is one of the most common checkmating patterns that you see. There's tons of materials out there, but I just wanted to show you an example of how this comes out of the ChessGoals repertoire. Thanks a lot, guys, and I wish you the best. Bye-bye.